There are moments in history when a nation doesn't just rise, it reclaims what was always its destiny. This is the story of a civilization that rose from the ashes of colonial rule. A nation once stripped of its wealth, its pride, and its power, yet destined to stand among giants. The question is not how India became a nuclear power, but why it had to. How did a country emerging from famine outmaneuver the mightiest powers on earth? Because when a civilization built on 5,000 years of wisdom decides to stand tall, no empire can make it kneel. How did a democracy under constant threat ensure its survival in a world built on fear and force? In every Indian heartbeat lived the same vow: never again would their freedom depend on another's mercy. This is not merely history, it is a chronicle of vision, courage, and unyielding resolve. The story of how India refused to be bullied. The world saw a developing country. India saw herself as a civilization preparing for resurgence. To understand India's nuclear journey, one must return to 1945, when the world witnessed the unimaginable. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, two cities erased in an instant, and with them, the birth of a new world order, one where true power would be defined not just by armies or economies, but by mastery of the atom itself. The United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, France, and China raced toward nuclear supremacy. But as they built arsenals, India watched, learning a lesson it would never forget: that moral strength alone cannot guarantee survival. Every trial India faced was a reminder. Sovereignty is not inherited, it is earned again and again. Then came 1962. The mountains of the north echoed with gunfire as Chinese troops crossed into Indian territory. India, barely 15 years old as a republic, faced humiliation and loss. And just 3 years later, in 1965, Pakistan struck. The young nation found itself surrounded by hostility, economically fragile, militarily stretched, and politically isolated. In those years, India realized an uncomfortable truth. Treaties could not protect India. Promises would not feed India. The world respected only strength. So when the global powers drafted the Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1968, a pact designed to keep nuclear weapons forever in the hands of a few, India refused to sign. Because for India, survival was not negotiable, the architects of this defiance were visionaries. Dr. Homi Bhabha, the father of India's nuclear program, returned from Cambridge in 1939 with a dream: to make India self-reliant in atomic science. To him, nuclear energy was not just power, it was dignity. In Bhabha's lab, atoms weren't just split, limitations were. He found support in Jawaharlal Nehru, who believed in using atomic science for peace, and in Lal Bahadur Shastri, whose quiet strength during the 1965 war gave India its moral spine. Financing came from industrial pioneers like Dorabji Tata, ensuring that research continued even when the treasury ran dry. By 1965, India's scientific base was strong enough to produce nuclear explosives. Bhabha declared that with government approval, India could build a bomb in 18 months. His words sent ripples through Islamabad and Washington alike. Pakistan's Zulfikar Ali Bhutto swore, "If India builds it, we will eat grass, but we will build one too." Then in 1966, tragedy struck. Both Shastri and Bhabha were gone, within weeks of each other. Officially, Shastri died of a heart attack. Bhabha perished in a plane crash. Many have questioned whether there was more behind their deaths. The nuclear program slowed, but the flame never died. The world would test India again in 1971. As Pakistan's military launched Operation Searchlight in East Pakistan, millions fled into India, refugees of a genocide. India intervened. It was not a war for power, it was a stand for humanity and for every refugee who looked to India for hope. But this time, global powers took sides. The U.S. 7th Fleet moved into the Bay of Bengal. British warships approached the Arabian Sea. India stood alone, its navy modest, its resources stretched. And yet, help came from the East. The Soviet Union, bound by a new friendship treaty, dispatched nuclear-armed vessels toward the Indian Ocean. Faced with this, the Western fleets retreated. Within weeks, Pakistan surrendered. Bangladesh was born. That war changed everything. India had won militarily, but its leaders knew. Next time, survival could depend on nuclear deterrence. For India, the test was never about conquest, it was about confidence. On May 18, 1974, under the code name Smiling Buddha, India conducted its first nuclear test in Pokhran, Rajasthan. Officially called a peaceful nuclear explosion, it was anything but a mere experiment. It was a message, delivered without aggression, yet unmistakable in its intent. India would never again be dictated to. Every detail was planned in secrecy. Plutonium from Trombay, detonation systems from Pune, assembly at Pokhran. Only a handful of people knew the full plan, and when the desert shook, the world trembled with it. Sanctions followed. Condemnation poured in. But the message was clear. India's sovereignty was not up for negotiation. Through the 1980s and 1990s, while the Cold War raged, India walked a lonely path. Economic challenges, oil shocks, and shifting alliances made progress difficult. Yet her scientists kept working, quietly refining plutonium, advancing technology, and preparing for the inevitable. By 1995, Prime Minister Narasimha Rao gave the green light for further tests, but American satellites detected movement, forcing him to halt the plan. It would take another leader to finish the mission. In 1998, Atal Bihari Vajpayee took office. His vision was clear. India must stand as a complete power, economically, politically, and strategically. He turned to a man whose name would soon become synonymous with India's scientific pride, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Together with a team of brilliant minds, they conceived Operation Shakti, one of the most secretive and daring scientific missions in modern history. The plan was executed with surgical precision. It wasn't science alone that guided them. It was the faith of a billion souls. Nuclear devices were moved in disguise, hidden in army trucks, covered with tarps, transported at night to evade satellite eyes. And then, on May 11, 1998, the desert roared once more. 3 explosions shook Pokhran, Shakti 1, 2, and 3, followed by 2 more in the days ahead. India had entered the elite nuclear club, but India didn't enter the club to threaten. It entered to remind the world that peace too has guardians. Pakistan would respond weeks later, confirming what the world already knew. South Asia had changed forever. Sanctions returned, but this time they failed to bend India's will. The nation's confidence had matured. India declared a no-first-use policy, promising peace but ensuring deterrence. 51 years after independence, the dream that began with Homi Bhabha had finally found its full expression. India was now a nuclear power, not to threaten the world, but to protect its peace. Today, India stands as the world's fastest-growing major economy, a democracy of 1.4 billion, and a responsible nuclear state. Its rise was not an accident. It was a statement of destiny. From Bhabha to Kalam, from Nehru to Vajpayee, India's journey embodies one truth. When survival depends on courage, no power on earth can stop a determined nation. This is not a story of weapons. It is the story of will. The story of how intellect triumphed over intimidation, how patience defeated provocation, and how a civilization, scarred by centuries of subjugation, reclaimed its voice, one nuclear spark at a time. Because when the world tried to contain India, India didn't retaliate, it rose. So now the question that echoes through history is this. When a nation once denied everything found the power to command respect, what could possibly stop India from achieving anything it dreams of next? This is not the story of bombs. It is the story of a billion people who refuse to bow. It is the story of Bharat, ancient in soul, modern in strength, eternal in spirit.